Good. Well, this is a little summary of the Building the Future programme that we've been working on for a few years in the church here. And we could call it, we wanted the kind of name that would go on to a grant application form, would be something like re-envisioning the self-attached church buildings for the 21st century. And I mean, I think one of the things to think about, and I've spoken about this before, is that we've got a fantastic building. There's lots of churches around the place who have got decrepit buildings, but we've got a good, solid building that was well built for us. It's in a good position. And over the years, every generation that has worshipped here has brought in improvements on the original. So in 1903, they put in the organ. In 1950, the nice ceiling. In the early, when it was about the 1980s, we opened up the meeting house at the back and took out the side pew so there was room for a little chapel. And then early this century we developed the kitchen and so on. And then we refurbished the hall. Every time we've used the building to its full potential and improved it as we could. And this is no different now. What we're looking at is what we could do now. And why are we looking at it now? Two reasons. One, because although it's a great building, we have some frustrations. Ask anybody that organises open door or works in the kitchen, and they say we need a bigger kitchen. We need to be able to spread out from this hall. It's full on a typical Monday. We need some space where we could extend what we do there. And the other kind of side of the why is that at the moment we have some money that we could spend. Since we sold the glebe manse, we have the money from that, and we're hoping to also be able to get some money by selling the field in Loneside opposite the new manse. And because of Church of Scotland rules, money that comes from the selling of a building or a bit of land can only be spent on a capital project. You can't use it to pay for your minister, you can't use it to pay your heating costs, you can't use it for general repairs. So it's either going to sit there mouldering in the bank doing nothing for us, or else we say other things we could do. So bringing together any frustrations we have with the possibility of being able to do something because we have a little bit of money is where we're at the moment. So also at the moment the Church of Scotland are pushing hard this idea of a church for the community, and we are already a church for the community. But the Church of Scotland nationally is trying to reduce the number of buildings by 40% so that investment can go into the buildings that are retained. Buildings like this that are in a good place, that are well maintained and could be developed increasingly for community use. We have many different community organisations using this hall, but in this last year we've had to turn away some people that would have liked to have hired this hall because it's already booked. And yet we've got a big space through there, but we only use it for an hour or so a week, and it's inflexible. So can we kind of deal with that issue? Also, for us that come here often, we know this building, we see it and we find ourselves confident to come in. But for somebody who's never been in this building before, you walk past in the week and the big doors are shut, or you come to the hall and say, where on earth's the hall? Well, it's down that wee side alleyway and so on. We want to make the building more welcoming so that outsiders, if you like, will feel that they can be insiders. We need to look to the future. There was somebody here yesterday from another church in our town who said it is so encouraging to come to a church where people are facing the challenges of the future and saying, let's try and do something about it. She said, in my church, everybody's saying, oh, we're just all old and we're all dying off and the church will just fizzle out. And it was just so encouraging to come and feel a different vibe. And what she said would be true. If we do nothing, of course it's not just about the building, then, wind the clock forward 20 years, and we're all 20 years older. We need to look to the future and say, let's face the challenges and do something. We had encouragement this morning And that encouragement, knowing that God loves us, whatever we do, should give us the confidence to take risks and do things that other people might think they're crazy. But we have a go and we at least try something. It might all fall around our ears, but unless we try, we don't know. But looking to the future, we have to respect the past. And many congregations have demolished their old buildings, not many, but some have demolished old buildings and built a brand new modern building on its site. I don't think that's the right thing to do here. We've got a building that we want to keep. It's part of the town. We want to respect the past and use it the best we can. So, a year ago, the Kirk Session agreed to appoint an architect who is a specialist in church renovations and new church builds to do what we call an options appraisal. That is to come and survey the building, talk to us about what we feel frustrated about, what we would like to see different, and come up with some ideas. And the kind of things we spoke to the architect about were the things that many of you responded over the last 2 or 3 years to articles in the Herd with your suggestions, or just talking to the small group that have been involved in that about what you would like. Flexible spaces, different size spaces. If you've got a committee of 12, you don't really want to hire this whole big hall if there would be a nice room that was just the right shape and size for a committee. We don't have that. Or if several groups want to do things at the same time, we can't do that. Even if we want to do like Catholic Church like we did today, we want to do that sometimes, we wouldn't want to do that every Sunday. But if the church numbers grow, and we still want to do some Catholic churches sometime, we'd have to do that in the main church building with the space. But you can't do that as it is at the moment because it's inflexible. So building in that flexibility, the welcoming entrance I've talked about, access for all, replacing those stone steps at the front and so on, making access to the toilets through here easier for those with relators and wheelchairs, or indeed for young children. We need more storage. It's always a problem. We need more storage to keep all our chairs, but all our other stuff. If we, again, had a toddlers group like we did a wee while back, we had all their big toys, where would we put them? And again, we think, yeah, but we've got all this space, and we're not using it to good effect. And then the energy issue is obviously very key at the moment. And as we know, the cost of heating a building is going up. The insulation we did here has made a huge difference to the comfort level in this part of the building. We need to do something in the rest of the building to address that. So those key aims went to the architect, and he then came back with some suggestions. And what we have at the moment are not fixed plans. This is what we want to do, yes or no. These are the architect's ideas of the things we might do. And he particularly has identified things we might do in the front entrance, some things we might do in the kind of hall and kitchen area back here, and some things we might do with the worship area. If you can understand that plan, it's the ground floor, this is the upstairs gallery with the kind of horseshoe-shaped curved tiered seating. And I'll say a little bit about each of those in turn. But it's very much a case of these are things we could do, and we will look at them and discuss them over the next few months, and we might say, I want to do all of that, or we might say we'd love to do some of that, or actually we don't like any of it, or we'd like to do something completely different. So it's not a take it or leave it thing, it's very much a kind of set of ideas to initiate some discussions. So let me just briefly say a little bit about each of those areas. And the plans and things there are going to be up probably in the meeting house for 2 or 3 weeks. And then we'll probably put some of them on the wall here as well. So over the next few weeks and months, you and your friends could come and look at them and ask questions and make comments. There's little forms here at the side there which ask you to put your comments on them. We got 30 of those back yesterday with lots of useful, positive suggestions, questions, people saying, whoa, what about such and so on. And if we have those, take one away or fill it in today, take it away, bring it back, and you can then be part of that ongoing discussion, have your say. So, front entrance, quickly, that's what we currently have. I've got a wee pointer of it. The door, the bottom here is the door from the street. And we come into that vestibule and you're faced with a wall. So if you're a stranger, you think, where on earth am I going now? What's behind that wall? We've got the meeting house, as we call it, that kind of gathering area, and then the church itself, the pews and the stage and the organ and so on. So what the architect was suggesting we might think about for that area is to redevelop it something like this. So this is the same kind of view. So coming in from the street, build a little kind of platform out there, perhaps with ramps to make it easier for disabled access and so on. Probably put glass doors rather than the wooden doors. And then inside you come in and then there would be another kind of glass screen with glass doors. So you get what we call an airlock lobby. You've got two sets of glass doors and that reduces the drafts. Those of you that sit near the back of the church know all about drafts. That would stop those drafts coming in, but still bring light in and let you see from outside. You can open up the current meeting house, take it a bit further forward and get a nice space which would be about roughly, I suppose, the size of this distance of the hall to maybe about where those first tables are. So it would give you quite a nice little space that could probably seat round tables or in rows or whatever, maybe 30 to 40 people. So that might be somewhere where during the week we might man that, we might have volunteers there, just a warm space for people to pop in. We'd move the office from away at the back where it's heading to the front there, so that people coming in, strangers or delivery people, come in and the office would be right there with a kind of reception desk, like you'd find in any other organisation. Maybe a minister's vestry could be in there at one side, and you could also have more toilets and a kitchen, small kitchen or servery there. So that becomes much more welcoming space at the front there. This is what that might look like using the architect's 3D modelling. So it's the details are not necessarily exact, but it's to give you a kind of feel for what a glass door there might look like. And he's created stone steps, new steps there with maybe ramps to either side. And the right-hand picture would be what it would look like from inside there looking out. So I see they seem to have demolished the rest of Selkirk. We've got a green field across the road. But I think that's just the way the modelling came out. And that's what that space could be set out like. You could set it out with little tables and chairs, or you could set it out in different ways. Of course, that could also be a space in the evening that a group that met in the evenings and maybe had 30 people or less could hire separately. They wouldn't need to hire this hall. So you could have two complete different groups using the building at the same time. So it's immediately kind of doubles the amount of community use we can have of the building. You can see the pillars there. Those are the pillars that currently are where the glass screen at the back of the church currently is, that hold up the upstairs. So it's taking that area, which we already have opened up, and bringing it a little bit further in. It's a possibility, something we might think about. And if we did that, then you'd be left with a smaller worship area than we currently have, but still would seat something like 150, which is more than enough on a typical Sunday. And you'd still have the upstairs gallery and so on, which again seats another 200 and 250 at the moment, if we did just that section. We'll come back to that in a wee while. So that's kind of some ideas from that front area, and we could have a discussion about how you would want to use that, which groups that currently come in might prefer that, to use that area. Come on to the kitchen and hall area. I can remember a holiday club once where we were going to have a barbecue and it was pouring rain, and we cooked sausages and stuff in what was the then kitchen, which is the storeroom now. We cooked for about 100 kids, and that was the hottest place in Scotland for a couple of hours. Well, things moved on, and we've got this kitchen and the office built, 20 odd years ago, not sure exactly when it was now. So this is what we currently have. A lot of improvements done 10 or so years ago. But this area out the back here is just a bit unsatisfactory. We've got that long, thin meeting room, which is not really a very convenient room. We've got this kind of maze of corridors that are not great. So our architect came up with some suggestions there, which some surprised us and some didn't. We weren't surprised with the suggestion that we could double the kitchen out into the office. If we're moving the office to the front, then that would make sense, and that would give the kitchen folk direct access to the storage room, and also allow access to the kitchen without coming through the hall, which has been a problem sometimes when there's been a group using the hall, and Jane, our cook, was wanting to come in and get into the kitchen. It wasn't possible. So that didn't surprise us. But what did surprise us was his suggestion that we could really open up that area. We could take down the walls, open up that meeting room and the corridors into a nice gathering space, a nice social space, and also suggesting that in the wee corner there, I don't know if you come in, some of you come in that way, the office entrance we talk about, it's not exactly, makes you feel you want to come in there. If you were a stranger and you think, is this the right door to go in? Suggesting we build out there a small kind of porch area, so you'd have, that would then become the main hall entrance. You come in there, there'd be an informal area for gathering, your coat hooks and access toilets and so on there. And then through into the main hall for activities. And suggestion that we might open up this middle bit of the wall with a kind of folding screen so that it could be opened up to make one big space or two separate spaces. What that might look like? Well, architects at the moment are into steel. It has to be grey and glass. That seems to be the chosen preferred thing at the moment. So he's designed there the kind of thing we might have out there. That's the view looking in from this down the side. This is the view looking out down the passage with the car park on the left there. So a nice welcoming area that people wouldn't feel threatened. You can see what you're coming into before you come in. And this is what the area through there might look like if we had a glass screen there, folding glass screen. We had quite a lot of discussion yesterday saying, well, I don't know if the folks that are doing yoga or Pilates or whatever through in here won't really want us all peering through the glass windows. So that might be a wooden partition opening up rather than a glass one might be more appropriate, or at least frosted glass or something. On the right there, you're seeing a hatch through into where the kitchen would be, so from the kitchen you could serve into the hall or into that area. That's area 2. Yeah, that's the kitchen. Area 3, you're left with the worship area. What might we do with that? And that's where obviously things become a bit more radical and people have quite strong views on either way. That's what we currently have downstairs. And what surprises me when I see that plan is that only half the space is actually the seating area. We've got this massive stage which has on it a pulpit which we haven't used for 25 years or more. We have an organ which doesn't work and is 90 years old, and we're not sure whether we'll be able to afford to repair it. We're investigating that at the moment. So it should be possible to reduce that space. And although we've got that great big space, when we had our choir the week before Christmas, we couldn't really make use of it because of all the things that are on it. So getting the balance there is right. So if we just did the kind of changes I've already spoken about, that's what we would be left with downstairs, which would be an improvement. It'd be more flexible, be more suitable for size, but you would still have the upstairs and everything to heat. So our architect said, well, there's various ways you could try and split that building, but really the only way that really works to preserve the past and give you the flexibility of the future is to do what was floated way back 30 years ago, to take the worship area upstairs. So that's the upstairs layout as would be. We'd keep the side tiered pews along either side and coming around the back here. So you get a kind of nice amphitheatre effect. and in the centre, floor it at the level of the balcony, and in the middle you'd have a flat area where you could have flexible seating. And you could seat about 130 in that middle area and about another 150 round the outside. So you're talking about seating for 250 to 300 people in there, which would cover 90% of our uses. And obviously you'd put in full sound and IT systems, so you could have a relay down into the hall here if, like on Wednesday, where we're expecting maybe 500 people. But there are not many events that need that many people, but we could have a relay, a video relay into the hall here as well, which would get another 150 on the occasions we need it. But for most of the time, on a Sunday, that would be more than adequate for our needs. It would also create a venue that could be used the rest of the week for concerts, exhibitions, talks, and so on. A middle-sized venue. In the town, we've got the Victoria Hall, which is the big venue, and we've got a number of quite small spaces, but we don't have any kind of middle-sized venue like that. So we think that doing that would be a great value to the town. Let me show you a photograph of a church that I was on Christmas Day. Does that look like a traditional, normal kind of church? It does. But that is a church which did what the architect is proposing we could do, I think about 25 years ago. That is actually the upstairs of a former church. These pews you see on the left there, they had tiered pews like us. They've kept them, and at the back here they've got tiered pews coming up. But the floor of the central area, and they've got flexible seating in there. And the thing about it is, the things that make the church feel like the church are actually up there. The windows, the nice arches, a lot of the woodwork, the nice ceiling are all there. We wouldn't lose that feel of a traditional church. But we have a space which would take about half the amount of heating. It would be much easier to keep warm. That's our architect's impression of what that might look like in a kind of stylized image, looking the other way, looking from what would be the kind of pulpit end, if you like, looking towards that window, which is the window above the door, looking out onto the main road. And he's shown there with the tiered pews removed and just the kind of stepped bit. You could do it that way, or you could decide to put the actual pews as they've done there, or a mixture of the two. If you've not been up in the balcony and looked at what that would look like, everybody that goes up and does say, oh, it's surprisingly much more roomy and airy and bright than I'd imagine. You're not underneath the balcony anymore. The acoustics would be good. And at the back, you could have a level area. You take out the big rows of seating, which some of you have just been clearing the junk off, and level that out, and have a nice little gathering area there where you can have some toilets, and that glass box in the middle of the back there, the lift coming up from below, as well as the two stairs which currently exist and which should be refurbished to make them a bit more attractive. The actual details of how you would decorate that and so on, it's got glass and steel and all the rest of it, would be up for us, but it gives you a kind of idea of the feel and space that you would have. The additional benefit of that is that doing so would then open up a big area underneath. The top half of that could then be used for other rooms, and there are various ways you could lay it out. There'd certainly be room for two small halls, each about 2/3 the size of this. So if you did that, if you did all of these things, we'd have this hall, two medium-sized halls there, the front gathering area, and the upstairs. 5 different spaces that could actually be used almost all simultaneously by different groups if you had good acoustics and so on. So that would really open the place up for community use. In fact, you could then almost market the venue during weekdays as a conference centre, where you've got an auditorium and breakout rooms. And that could then give employment to caretaker, bring in money that would allow you to employ a caretaker. It would give work for local caterers and so on. So lots of opportunities there if we were brave enough. And when I look at all this, part of me says, we could never do this is just too much, we can't do this. And the other part of me looks at it and says, wow, wouldn't this make a huge difference to us as a church and to the community as a whole? So I don't know how we hold those two things in balance, and I'm sure you've all got a mix of those two things in your head. This right-hand side, I've labelled the 3 small rooms on the right there, each which would have one of the external windows bringing light into it in a way that a church in Inverurie has done, which did something like this about 10 years ago. And they've got the first little room as a prayer room, kind of chapel, quiet room. So you've got that front social area and people want to go and sit quiet and pray or go and talk to somebody. You've got that area. They've got a wee library resources area where people can borrow books and videos and things. And then the next bit could be caretaker and cleaners base right in the middle of the building. That's very flexible, but those are just kind of some of the ideas that has been suggested. So, that's a quick whistle-stop tour, but it gives you an idea to put into context what you see in the plans there. And as I said before, it's very much, here are some ideas, what do you think? Which of those do you like? Which of those do you think, no, that wouldn't work for us? And so on. And as I say, the plans and images will be there for a while. Just to finish off with, if it's working, the architects now don't just work on paper plans, but they can create computer models. And if this works, we can show you a little video fly-through of what that might look like, just to give you a kind of feel for it. Sometimes it's a bit tricky just to get it to go nicely. That's really good. Let me pause that a minute and slow it down. It takes about 4 minutes, I think, and it just takes us through the building as could be envisaged if we carried out all these things. So there's the front entrance, glass door. He's put little walls there to protect the ramps. I don't think planners would like that very much, look a bit kind of clunky, but you'd obviously have to have some sort of railing there if you had a ramp coming up each side. Of course, we could landscape the front area differently too. And then down the right-hand side here, the field is morphed into 2 big black barns there, and all the upper part of Selkirk seems to have disappeared from view. But we're coming along the side there with the car park. And this is the new hall entrance that is proposed. Architects now populate things with bits of furniture and people, but it gives you a kind of idea of the size of it, because it's otherwise quite difficult in the plans to envisage how big or small that is. Opening into this social area, there's the kitchen hatch at the back, and there's, as envisaged at the moment, with the glass screen here, looking through into the hall we have here. So there's the hall, currently is. Obviously, if we were doing a lot of that development work, we'd have to, as a congregation, live in the hall for a bit of time for services and other activities. We're fortunate to have that. I know Moffat Church is doing something like this, and they're saying, well, everything's going to happen down the road at Beatick or Wamfrey or somewhere. But they're going through a similar process. There's the 4 doors into the toilets. It's much more open. That's better than the way it currently is. In terms of child protection, that's particularly an issue. So this is coming through the door there into what is currently the church. Let me just pause that. Yeah. So we're coming through, as you would go through from here into the church, and the aisle up the side would now be this corridor. In the image here, just I think the perspective makes it look very narrow and kind of claustrophobic, but obviously that could be adjusted with small rooms on the left and those two bigger rooms in on the right. And they take us into those two rooms which have been set up for the purposes of display as a youth room. Through the door, there we go. Youth room, and there you can see that new ceiling, and then the ceiling slopes up, which is the bit that's currently under the balcony. There's the pillars that form that. So a decent sized room for a group that didn't want something as big as this, but what more than just a small meeting room. And the other room maybe similar size. They set it up as a kids' room, and again that's something that we might want to have in the future. But again, these could just be spaces that people hired for their own purposes. Decor is obviously just random decor that's put in, white walls and wooden floors and so on. That would be up to us what we wanted to do. And this is then coming through into the gathering space at the front with the kitchen or servery on one side. And some nice donuts for sale there. The pillars, the doors on the left, one of those would probably be like a reception desk glass screen or something, I guess. And then looking round to the outside to the double glass doors, so you get nice light in there, nice and open to the community. Glass door there on the right would be the lift up to upstairs, and then the stairs we're going to go up in a moment to see what that would look like. At the moment those stairs are the same stone treads that they were, built in 1880. We obviously want to make them a bit more attractive, wooden or carpeted or whatever. And they wouldn't need to go all the way up. They could then level out at this level, come out at the lower left level of the balcony. If you've been up there, the current steps come up to the highest level of the balcony, but this could come in at the lowest level, so it wouldn't be such a big trudge up the stairs. And then we could, that area we can do is what we like with, but we've got a flat area there, a couple of toilets, maybe a wee serving hatch, an area at the back where parents with young children could come out to. Again, that's been shown very kind of minimalistic style, but we might well want to say we want to retain those historic tiered pews at the sides. And you can see you're seeing the arches that are there, you're seeing the ceiling above, you're getting a good view of those windows, so you have the look and feel of the historic building. But less drafty. I don't know if there's a non-drafty seat in that church. I know at the back it's drafty, and I know if you're sitting up at the front near the organ, it's terribly drafty in the winter. But there would be, we'd probably double glaze the side windows and so on. Lots of light coming in. So, that's the kind of run